Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to Our World of Darkness, where today we will be continuing our reading of Chicago by Night for 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade. We are on Chapter 4, which is Kindred of Chicago. Now, this chapter details clan by clan the individual Kindred NPCs, or SPCs as they're now called, who have interactions in the city and how exactly they weave in and out of each other's existences. So, what I'm believing that we're going to do is start with the Banu Haquim, move on to Bruja, and so on and so forth. But what we're going to do is do a video. We're going to do a video per clan. So, we shall begin with Chapter 4, Kindred of Chicago. Who would choose to damn themselves by running in a city of sin such as this? To hell with Chicago and its kindred. A quote by Joseph Peterson, then true media mogul and recently deposed Prince of Chicago, now in exile. Chicago's Camarilla kindred proudly proclaim the city as a sex American crown jewel. Kindred such as the Prince Kevin Jackson, Sheriff Damien, and the city's Primogen Council all feel pride for the membership of the elite sect. Chicago made it, where cities like Indianapolis and Cincinnati fell to the ivory tower's strict, renewed traditions. An interstate of ignominy, Chicago flourished, while San Jose and Jacksonville stumbled and fell in the economic recessions of the last 2 decades. Where cities like LA and New Orleans felt the swelling of anarch uprising, Chicago endured and ascended to new prominence. The old ways under Loudon are gone. The lupine threat is supposedly neutered. Chicago is, according to Prince Jackson, the unassailable throne of the American Camarilla. Naturally, many kindred dispute such a claim. Jackson's progressive face all smiles for the Justicars and the neonates, preaching education of the traditions for all fledglings, and a step onto the ladder of our sect for all of those who deserve it, as an appealing line, but fails to mention the cold-hearted persecution of anarchs and other dissidents. Education often comes in the form of threats, punishments, and the blood bond. If not schooling, at the Bruja's criteria's eternal academy, which comes with its own dangers. Those who deserve it are often Ventrue and Toreador, with little ground given to what Jackson casually dismisses as the lesser clans. The Kindred of Chicago don a peaceful veneer, happy to fake support for their prince. They know his appearance as a liberal unionist who came up from nothing with care for his fellow kindred is a complete sham. They know he has more in common with the Republican 1%er who holds the power and lets little slip through his fingers. He may not be the ideal ruler. Chicago may not be the Camarilla paragon domain the kindred claim it to be. But, for as long as the peace holds, the Archons stay away. The Anarchs fear the city's collective weight, and the city remains firmly in the Camarilla's grasp. It's all a lie, but so much about Chicago is. Status is king. The status background is absent from all character write-ups. due to its flexible nature for the majority of the kindred in this book. It can be assumed that the prince and primogen have a status of 5, the sheriff a status of 4, and hounds have a status of 3. Visiting dignitaries, political mediators, prominent keepers of Elysium, and party hosts are likely to have status between 2 and 4. The rest of the characters range between 1 and 3, depending on their recent activities. Chicago is a fluid city where kindred can lose status far sooner than they might gain it. Ooh, the Banu Haquim. Chicago is ripe vein to tap. Show the Camarilla we deserve a place on their jeweled throne. Tegrius, vizier of the Banu Haquim, in a command to Qadia al-Kindi. The children of Haquim have a small but important place in the domain of Chicago, acting as observers for the Ashira and welcome diplomats following the Vermilion wedding. Though they have yet to press for a seat on the Primogen Council, their numbers in the city are too few. Prince Jackson feels he can turn to the Banu Haquim for assistance in preserving the domain's defense, should it come under assault from the Anarchs, in exchange for favors in the future. For their part, the Banu Haquim integrate themselves within the Chicago courts and sizable Muslim communities of the city, quietly waiting for an opportune time to prove their worth. Qadia al-Kindi. Epitaph. The disquieting diplomat. Quote, so many of your ancients have made their way to the Middle East, to my homeland. It's only sensible that the Ashira to send a representative in return. Clan Banu Haquim. Mortal days. Ascent from nothing. Born an orphan on the streets of Baghdad in the early decades of the 19th century, Qadia started life as a beggar. She thrived because her quick fingers and innocent face, graduating to running errands and acting as a lookout for criminals. By the time she was 12, she was part of a smuggling ring, eventually coming to live in Alexandria, Egypt. After she entered indepth, Qadia reflected on the fact that so many kindred had a similar background. They had lifted themselves from poverty and created masks of respectability to live among the well-to-do. The skills acquired during such a life were extremely useful in surviving the first years of indepth. In Qadia's case, establishment of the British colonial system in Egypt modernized by Muhammad Ali provided many opportunities to those capable of self-invention. She married 3 times, each husband lost to the vagaries of a criminal lifestyle. She had 5 children, 3 of whom made it to adulthood. All the while she worked to run a clandestine trade network, moving contraband across the Mediterranean. In her later years, Qadia settled down in Alexandria, under a new identity as a member of the Egyptian elite, facilitated by her 3rd husband, British colonial officer. She'd worked hard to create a good life and intended to enjoy it. Kindred Nights, the Ashira's voice. Katya was in her late 50s at the time of her embrace. Her sire has a fairly recent embrace himself and brought her into the night for love. He saw that she was on the cusp of old age and wanted her to live forever. The hunger be damned. As these stories so often go, the relationship between sire and child didn't last much longer than it took for Katya to acclimatize to her new condition. After she realized that counting from human birth, her sire was younger than she was, she abandoned him and set to create an unlife for herself in the Ashira courts of the Middle East. As the 20th century progressed, Katya served in various roles in different courts of Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. Her preference was the role of an emissary or a representative because it allowed her to travel and participate in the making of history. In the long term, the embrace made Katya's journey from street urchin to privileged elite complete. Being undead removed the last barriers set before her, those created by living in a conservative society as a woman. As a supernatural creature of the night, she had the power of the blood to assist her will, and in Ashira society. Most understood long ago that discounting kindred because of their gender was youthful folly of those still clinging to their human lives. Tonight, Katya is the favored emissary of the Ashira, with access to the immense financial backing of the sect. She's able to travel despite the threat of the Second Inquisition because of her access to the travel infrastructure of the ultra-rich. When she arrives in Chicago on her private plane, a member of the Dubai ruling family, no customs officers will check her travel coffin. Plots and schemes. Entering the ranks. The Primogen Council would be the appropriate place for Katya, of course, while she remains in Chicago. Used to immediately entering the most elite circles of any city she visits, she feels that the Ashira and the Camarilla are coming together in alliance. She should take a role in the affairs of her new home. Making this happen might require some political maneuvering, but it's nothing she hasn't done before. Detachment. Katya has become increasingly conscious of her fading conscience as of late. Her focus on top-level sect politics has left her connections to humanity increasingly distant. She feels desperate to rectify this, to find something to care about. The problem is that while she moves in the halls of power with perfect confidence, she's not so well practiced anymore when it comes to interactions with ordinary humans. Her attempts to connect now sometimes appear bizarre. Voice of the innocent. As a political actor on the Chicago stage, Katya is motivated as much by curiosity as the interests of the Ashira. For this reason, she's always willing to listen to a neonate, especially if it's someone unusual or seemingly human. Katya can recognize that which she lacks and wants to be closer to it. The problem is her inhumanity might start causing problems for her and her new friends. Domain and Haven. The Four Seasons, Chicago. Fame 3, Haven 4, Resources for Retainers 3. Katya is currently staying in a massive suite in the Four Seasons Hotel. It costs $35,000 a night, but what's money when shady fun? What's money when shady Emirati business interests connected to the Assyria are footing the bill? They also pay for the heavy private security, keeping an eye on the suite around the clock. As a recent arrival, Katya doesn't have a natural domain, but she feeds from among the city's political and financial elites. Thralls and Tools. Reginald Ashton. Resources 2, Retainers 2. Reginald Ashton, Katya's third husband from her mortal days, still serves her as a ghoul, although their marital relationship faded away a century ago. He's a 19th century British diplomat who will die of old age the second his source of vitae dries up. Driven to exhaustion by the endless humiliations of being a blood junkie, he's quietly looking for an exit despite the blood bond. Camarilla Hamidi contacts 1. Hamidi is a cellist and a rising star in the Chicago classical music scene. A cellist. He's a cellist. Katya saw her perform at a reception held by the office of the mayor of Chicago and latched onto her somewhat arbitrarily. She showered Hamidi with gifts and sought to establish a connection with her, but her efforts faltered because Hamidi thinks she's a creep. Nice. Kindred relationships. Asya Rana. Proud. Quote unquote proud. Asya is Katya's fixer and guide to the modern world. She embraced the girl 5 years ago in Marcellus. Having selected her child semi-randomly at a nightclub because Asya looked like she was in tune with the youth of today, so far Katya has been very proud of her child, as Asya has introduced her to all kinds of new mortal experiences. Kathy Glens. Intrigued. When I say these things, proud and intrigued, what I mean by that, the way that this book puts it out, is that Katya is proud of her child, Asya. Kathy Glens intrigues Katya. So, I'll continue. Katya has developed an interest in Kathy, similar to the one that she has with the mortal Camarilla Hamidi. She likes kindred who seem in tune with the mortal world and seeks to move with them, help them, emulate them, and though she doesn't seem to mean to do so, make them as dead to mortal ethics as she is. Whispers. Pilgrimage. Many Camarilla elders have gone to the Middle East, called by the beckoning. Surely Katya knows where they went and what they're doing. So that's interesting. Whispers tends to mean what other people think of this character. She must know what the beckoning actually truly is because she comes from the area where it's occurring. A distant threat. The Ashira is a vast, powerful, and mysterious sect of kindred largely unknown in Chicago. Who knows what kind of terrible resources and power they call upon. Unknown quantity. Though she's seen as a political long shot on the Chicago scene, some neonates are considering allying with Katya. After all, her Ashira background is a very confusing and appealing from a perspective of city politics. Alluring youth. Katya has a tendency to become obsessed with younger neonates. A neonate who understands this can exploit her. Although it will be playing with fire, Katya can be very generous with her resources and time with young kindred who seem like they are connected to her humanity. But if she gets bored of them, she'll drop them in an instant. Mask and mean. Katya has a mortal identity of an Egyptian investor with a slew of holdings across the Middle East. There's little information about her available publicly, but in this she doesn't differ from much other members of the global wealthy elite who wish to remain anonymous and have the money to make it happen. Mask 2. A weathered, hard woman in her late 50s, Katya looks as if everything will be perfectly pleasant, as long as things happen exactly as she wants them to happen. Despite her decades of luxurious life, the mark of the hard existence can still be seen on the lines on her face. There's nothing soft about her. Katya dresses like a wealthy older woman of the international moneyed set. She prefers simplicity and neutral colors, with minimal jewelry. At a glance, she could be mistaken for a member of the exiled court of the Shah of Iran. Sire, Pink. Her sire's name is Pink. Oh! I wonder if her sire is Pink from Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. That's an interesting thought. I'm going to have to look into that to see if that's a thing. Embraced, 1876. Born, 1821. Ambition. Develop a bond of trust with Prince Jackson. Convictions, none. Touchstones, none. Humanity, 5. Generation, 9. Blood potency, 2. Attributes. She has a strength of 2, a dexterity of 3, and a stamina of 4. A charisma of 3, a manipulation of 4, a composure of 4. Intelligence of 4, wits of 3, and a resolve of 4. Secondary attributes. Health, 7. Willpower, 8. Skills. Brawl, 2. Melee, 2. Larceny, 3. Stealth, 3. Survival, 4. Etiquette, specialized in court, 5. Intimidation, specialized in commanding, 4. Leadership, 3. Persuasion, compromise, 4. Subterfuge, 4. Awareness, 3. Finance, 2. Occult, 3. Political, Ashira, 4. Disciplines. Celerity, 4. Dominate, 2. And Obfuscate, 3. She has foregone blood sorcery, or quietus. Interesting. Asha, Rana, her child. Epitaph, the moral hustler. Quotes. I know we're all monsters here, but that doesn't mean we couldn't use a little kindness. Nice. Clan Banu Haquim. Mortal days. few sweet memories. Poverty and hopelessness tend to grind people down, but Asya never lost her basic sense of optimism. Born in Marseilles, France, to a poor North African family, Asya didn't have a lot of prospects growing up. She deemed to go to art school and becoming a rapper, but instead she barely had time to practice her rhymes. And she was working in a warehouse or as a waitress. To make money, when times were tough, Asya dealt drugs to her friends and made amateur videos for YouTube of herself rapping or dancing. Sometimes she participated in more serious crimes, but never against people like herself, poor in the precarious position. She justified it by their collective need. Nobody was taking care of them, so they had to do something themselves. Although, in all honesty, sometimes it was just because you get dumb ideas when you're high at 2 a.m. In her final years as a mortal, Asya's life moved from catastrophe to catastrophe. Her father was in a workplace accident and lost his leg. The stress of having to support him gave her mother panic attacks. Her little brother went to jail for mugging. As far as she knew, this would be the shape of her life forever. Kindred nights, no bed of roses. 5 years ago, Asya was one of the millions of working poor from immigrant backgrounds toiling all over Europe in menial jobs. Her creative ambitions remained hobbies, making it possible for her to find a modicum of happiness in an otherwise gray life. In the movies, an eternal vampire fell in love with a girl who has unique qualities of loyalty and love. It wasn't like that for Asya. She was a random victim of a monster's momentary need. One night, when she was partying with her friends, an ancient, undying creature drained her blood, forced her to become her child. Her first night as a vampire was a terrible time for Asya. Her newfound hunger threatened to destroy who she was, and Katya Al-Kindi wasn't exactly a caring, helpful sire. The older child of Haquim expected Atya to get her shit together or die. After a year, Atya followed her sire in a desperate super, barely comprehending the hell she had entered. Yet, bit by bit, her former personality emerged again. She found she could control the hunger if she set her mind to it, at least most of the time. She could help people even as her service to Al-Kindi demanded she hurt them. The money she suddenly had access to could be sent home to her family and friends from her mortal days, elevating them from poverty. Asya worked as a fixer and guide for Al-Kindi, Al-Kajia. Traveling the world with her sire. Fortunately, Katya keeps her on a long leash, so she has time and opportunity to explore the world of the Kindred for herself. Plots and schemes. Getting by. From her sire, Asya understands they'll be in Chicago for a while. She has decided to use this opportunity to make a life for herself, or at least as much of a life as a vampire can have. She works to move into the drug trade, reasoning that using her vampiric powers on criminals is not so bad. Of course, the drug trade has victims of its own, but for Asya, it's such a fact of life she doesn't question its existence. In search of life, Asya desperately wants to get to know Kindred, who are not her sire. She fears and respects Katya, and will never turn against her, but any semblance of happiness is only possible far from an inhuman privileges of the older vampire's existence. Half of the time she's naive, the other half hardened, depending on how much she wants to fool herself. Salvage what is sacred. As she gets to know local kindred better, Asya will find it harder and harder to ignore their mortal turpitude. After all, if she ignores the evil perpetrated all around her, she will lose sight of who she is and fall to the hunger. Worse, her sire provides nightly opportunities for witnessing vampiric terrors in action. As she gathers her courage, Asya finds determination to sabotage the plots of her elders, because they're morally despicable monsters. Or at least she'll try, until the beast finds purchase in her soul. Nice. Domain and Haven. Roseland House. Contacts 1, Haven 1. Asya used to share her sire's hotel suite, but has recently moved to a place of her own, the house of her dealer. Contact Fred the Creep. So named because of his habit of creeping up to people, Fred has a derelict house in the Roseland neighborhood of Chicago's South Side. To his great confusion, Asya has started to sleep in his basement and get to know people in the neighborhood. Thralls and Tools. Fred, the Creep. Contacts 1, Resources 1. Asya's newest thrall is Fred, who doesn't know the mysterious woman who suddenly appeared in his life is a vampire, but understands that something bizarre is going on. Fred is a small-time drug dealer, and Asya wants to use him to trace his network up until she has a source for better quality material she can then sell to a higher-paying clientele she meets through her sire. With the money she accumulates doing this, she plans to build a more secure life for herself. Fred finds Asya to be mysterious, exotic, and unapproachable, like a character from television. Stephen Woods, Retainers 1. Woods is a 70-year-old blood junkie servant originally retained by Katya 50 years ago to act as a manservant. Bored of managing servants, Katya delegated him to Asya, who promptly forgot to feed the poor man, resulting in him aging 50 years rapidly. Asya feels terrible guilt over this, which allows Wood to get away with much more than would normally be able to. That sucks. Kindred relationships. Katya, Al-Kindi. Mola 3, disappointing. Katya is Asya's sire and employer. Asya is familiar with the incredible wealth of her sire's commands, but doesn't want anything to do with it if possible. She finds the wealth and social milieu associated with it so morally debased that the company of Southside junkies is much preferable. I would like to apologize now if I'm for mispronouncing these names. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm not. Marcel. Mola 2. Familiarity. Marcel from the ministry is deeply connected to the Chicago drug trade, and Asya hopes to learn from him. After all, they're both from Marcellus. Although Marcel left the city long before Asya was even born, still, they've met a few times and engage in the time-honored pastime of immigrants everywhere, complaining about the locals. Whispers. Foreign power. Asya is an agent of a mysterious and dangerous Ashira, the Kindred of the Middle East, whose organization predates the Camarilla. Dubious alignment. For an agent of mysterious Ashira, Asya seems very young and uninterested in the sect-level politics of the Kindred. Based on how she spends her nights, she could easily be mistaken for Anarch. Easy target. Asya's nice. Perhaps so nice, she can be exploited by someone slippery enough to fool even one with her lifetime of experience with various hustles. Give me freedom. Asya wants out from under the yoke of her sire. Even if she isn't strong enough yet to admit it herself, perhaps someone could do her a good turn and help her out. Mask and mean. Asya doesn't have a legal mortal identity that would hold water in the U.S. She's an EU citizen, but she came to the country clandestinely on her sire's private jet, so she has no desire to interact with any mortal authority. Apart from this, plenty of mortals know her as a new face, a young French girl who goes to see rap gigs and sells weed. Asya is a tall, self-assured North African woman in her 20s. She has an approachable expression and looks cheerful until someone tries to fuck with her. If that happens, she turns on a dime and lets the asshole know what's what. At this point, she usually switches to French. Traveling with her sire, Asya has learned to dress as the situation warrants, from looking like a personal assistant to a gala dress. On her own, she prefers to experiment with street styles of wherever she is. Sire, Kaja al-Kindi. Embraced, 2014. Wow. Born 1992. Ambition. Ingratiate herself with the Chicago Kindred. Convictions. Always encourage other kindred to show mercy. Touchstones. Her family. Far away, back home. Humanity 8. Generation 10. Blood potency 1. Attributes. Strength 3. Dexterity 3. Stamina 3. Charisma 3. Manipulation 3. Composure 2. Intelligence 2. Wits 4. Resolve 4. Secondary attributes: health 6, willpower 6. Skills: athletics, specialized in sprinting 3, brawl 3, drive 2, firearms 2, melee 2, larceny, specialized in drug deals 3, stealth 3, survival 2, etiquette 1, intimidation 1, performance, specialized in rapping 2. Persuasion 2, streetwise, specialized in students 4. Subterfuge 2, awareness 3, investigation 2, medicine 1, occult 1. Celerity 2 and offuscate 2 are her disciplines. Whispers. To explain whispers. Whispers are the whispers on each character right up true? Almost certainly not. But the domains Kindred have heard some of these rumors in Elysium, in private meetings across the hubbub of the dance floor. Any one of them can be spun into a plot surrounding an SPC. So that was very interesting to take a look at the Ashira representatives in Chicago being Clan Banu Haquim. I guess Banu Haquim would be kind of redundant to say Clan Banu Haquim because Banu is the equivalent of tribe. So, that was very interesting. Again, I apologize for the mispronunciation of words, and I lost my tongue there for a second, so I apologize for that too. We will continue next time with Clan Bruja in our reading of Chicago by Night. This is Our World of Darkness. I am Voivode Maquette, and I will see you next time. Good evening.